Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, after another very able demonstration from Boris Johnson as to why he is completely unfit to be Prime Minister, much less when the country is lurching from one crisis to another, I want to discuss the prospects for his party finally having had enough of him and replacing him. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So people will be going, another one, Phil, another time the Conservatives might finally get rid of him. Is this another false dawn? Yeah, probably. But after Johnson's beasting in Parliament by his own MPs on Wednesday, there are people, and that includes interested, well-informed people, seeing the final days of Boris Johnson. Unfortunately, we have seen it before. You know, we've had these, as I say, false dawns. It's absolutely the case that any other party leader, Conservative party leader, would be on their way out as a result of the debacle over Afghanistan. Boris Johnson was Prime Minister during the entire year and a half that we knew America intended to pull out, and there's no evidence that we did anything at all until the time came. We made no attempts to see if a European coalition could have replaced the Americans. Unlikely, you may say. I would agree. But the same European countries who could have done something will now have to face a refugee crisis. Could they have replaced the Americans? Probably not. But did Johnson even try to see what could be done? Because remember, it's not binary. It's not a case of either we could do everything or we could do nothing. Could we improve the situation? Yes. He could have attempted to coordinate a response, lessen the damage. But he was too busy making Europe his enemy in order to cement his populist power, a power that was won through Brexit. And that's the thing to consider when it comes to wondering, why is Boris Johnson still in charge? The Conservatives don't like incompetent leadership any more than anyone else does. The Parliamentary Party don't even like Boris Johnson on a personal level. But they were in a bind in 2019. They saw Johnson as the only person who could deliver Brexit and stop the party splitting. History has shown that they weren't exactly wrong, were they, if we're honest? It still required a sequence of events outside of their control, but it is doubtful that any other leadership candidates would have done what Johnson did. With our exit from the EU, as well as the customs union and single market, the Conservatives now really no longer need Johnson to do any of that. He's fulfilled his primary purpose for the ERG headbangers who led us here. But for the wider parliamentary party, he still represents that charisma that can win votes when you have no policies that are in the party's interests. The problem, I suppose, is that the Conservatives have lurched so far to their extremes that it's really difficult for anyone with any boundaries, moral boundaries, to run an effective campaign on their current platform. It's so far removed from what the public will accept, let alone want. The bottom line is that no matter how much damage Boris Johnson does to their party's reputation, or how much damage he does to the country's reputation or the country itself, they won't get rid of him until they think they have a successor who can replicate his electoral success next time round. And with fears that Brexit is only going to become a more obvious mess as time goes on, if they want that general election sooner rather than later, they need to be very sure of a replacement before taking that gamble. The outrage expressed by a number of Conservative MPs in Parliament on Wednesday was real. It was clearly real. Some of them blamed America, most choosing to blame Biden rather than the much more guilty Trump. But all of them still criticised Johnson's lack of preparation. Some will have felt personally about this, including a number of veterans in their ranks. Some won't care, but they know that voters care. But it only takes 15% of them, 55 Conservative MPs, to write a letter to their 1922 committee with the chairman, Sir Graham Brady, to express their loss of confidence in his leadership. As soon as Brady gets that 55th letter, Johnson is facing a leadership election, or at least a vote of no confidence. Now, as soon as that number is reached, we'd know about it pretty quickly. It doesn't take long. You sort of get a bit of a buzz when it's nearing the number anyway, don't you? That we haven't heard means that no more than 54 MPs have done so, and in all probability it's nowhere near that number. Now, there will be an element of caution. Even if MPs want to get rid of him, which I think many do, it's not enough to simply trigger the vote, because it does them no good if they can't be sure he would lose that vote of no confidence. Because it might only take 15% to trigger the vote, but it takes over 50% to actually force him into a leadership contest. So in reality, MPs who want him replaced might actually wish to wait until fully half of them are in favour of replacing him, because Conservative Party rules stipulate that if a vote of no confidence is triggered in Boris Johnson's leadership and he wins that vote of no confidence, they can't trigger another one for a full year. So that's the full year of him still being in charge. So who could they go for as a replacement? This is the problem, and it's why I think Johnson is still around. He's very, very expensive. They cannot afford him. But at the same time, who is there that gives them as much? Every time I've discussed another spectacular Johnson cock-up and wondered if this will be the moment where Tory MPs have finally had enough and shove him in the airlock, it turns out to be another false dawn. And it is not that Conservative MPs are behind him ultimately. You constantly read reports of their complaints to journalists about how bog useless he is. Embarrassing. Sometimes, as was the case this week, they even publicly call him out. They're just sick of him. But they obviously feel that their chances of retaining their seat at the next election are still best with him in place, because ultimately they might moan, but they're not doing anything about it. Or at least we don't have 55 of them doing anything about it. Look at the alternatives. Michael Gove, largely absent for a while. We've hardly seen him. He's been keeping a very low profile for a while, no doubt intending to avoid being smeared with Johnson's taint. Given that Johnson is only in place because he's a vote winner, he will only be replaced when Tory MPs believe that the public have finally had enough of his antics. That's what it is. It's not when Tory MPs get sick of him, really. They're sick of him now. It's when they think the public are sick of him. Or when the media that inform their public have. You know, a quick look at the papers the day after the debate, and I think this is yesterday from your point of view, watching this. And the right-wing press were going fairly easy on Johnson, judging by the headlines. I didn't read all the articles. You know, the Times reported that MPs blamed Biden. No mention of an attack on Johnson unless it was hidden in the article itself. Didn't read it. Same with the Daily Telegraph. The Financial Times reported anger at Johnson, as did the Express, which surprised me, because they have been his strongest standard bearers throughout the last year or so. Even when other right-wing papers have attacked him, they've defended him. The Daily Mail had it in for Dominic Raab. They were gunning for the Foreign Secretary, not the Prime Minister. Don't know about the Sun, but the point is that the press haven't signalled to Tory MPs that he needs removing. But when it does happen, it will be because the public are sick of him. So whoever replaces him needs to fulfil two qualities. One, they have to be more likely to win an election than Boris Johnson. You know, without this, nobody has a chance of replacing him. That is their top priority. Remember, they're not going to be put off just because Boris Johnson is unpopular. Margaret Thatcher was unpopular at a time when she was still winning elections. The second thing is they need someone who will represent strength where Johnson had weakness. Once you get rid of Boris Johnson, you are accepting that he had certain weaknesses that are not acceptable. So it's no good getting someone who is tainted with his failures. This makes it difficult for current cabinet ministers. Now, I didn't watch the whole debate. It lasted all day, but I didn't see Michael Gove or Rishi Sunak. I did see some reference to Sunak being there in a report, but I couldn't find, for the life of me, find any footage or photos of him there. But apparently he was there at some point. So I'll probably just say he wasn't there for very long. And I can find no evidence that Gove was there at all. Both of them run government departments that would be instrumental in dealing with the aftermath of the fall of Afghanistan. So both should have been not just there, but very much involved in the debate. But they both have leadership ambitions and so want to keep their heads down. But is this helping them? It's only speculation, this, but I can see this helping in creating a distance from Johnson in the eyes of the public, absolutely. But does it endear them to their parliamentary colleagues? After all, one of Johnson's problems is that he's a coward who avoids difficult situations. We all know what happened in the general election campaign. He hid in a fridge to avoid a journalist. Do MPs really want to elect a replacement who has a habit of ducking for cover? It's probably safe to say that Dominic Raab would have no chance now. I don't know that he stood much chance before. He's a bit thick. But this mess has surely finished off his credibility. Patel is too toxic for the public to get behind. She may be all right winning her very, very safe Tory seat in Essex, where you could stick a blue rosette on a chimp and get it elected. But I don't think she's going to win over marginals. Jeremy Hunt has maintained a distance without having to be quiet by refusing to serve in Johnson's government, sort of. But is he making enough noise to remain popular within the party? And the problem that all of them have is that they do not have that mindless optimism that somehow seems to fool people into thinking that this time the Tories will deliver on their promises. Yes, I know they didn't deliver last time, or the time before, or the time before that, or ever. But this time they will. And at some point, Boris Johnson will have to fall. But it won't be because he's gone too far with a particular failure that upsets Conservatives who ultimately prioritise their own political careers. You know, people listened to some very moving words from Tory MPs on Afghanistan and wondered if there was some humanity in them after all. They voted, all of them voted to take away our rights to peaceful protest very recently. They voted to reduce the aid budget in places like Afghanistan. Even now, Johnson said on Wednesday he's going to double the aid budget, but he'd already slashed the aid budget by 78%. So what he means now is that that aid budget is 44% of what it used to be a year ago. So it's still a cut. During a time like this, he's still effectively cutting the aid budget to Afghanistan by 56%. They voted for it. Yes, quite a lot of them argued against it, and they voted for it rather. Very few didn't. Some abstained. They voted for it. They're voting to make it harder for people to vote in the next election. You know, I liken their outrage in Afghanistan, which was real, to like a conditioned response. In the same way that Alexa, if I say to her, I'm not feeling very happy today, she will pretend to show concern for me. She's just programmed to. Nobody with any humanity would be presiding over the human tragedy that is current Conservative Party policy for this length of time and still happily vote for more. So no point appealing to their nobler instincts. They don't have any. It's down to demonstrating that he will lose them the next election. And his replacement may be just as bad, morally, but I think Johnson must be replaced anyway in order for people to see that the problems aren't down to the leader, but the whole rotten party. People who are not actually Conservatives need to get behind whichever candidate will challenge them, and moderate Conservatives need to vote against them, as some Republicans did against Trump, in order to begin the rebuilding of their party. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.